we show.
Who's the we? Okay, you mean
Mormons or how?
Yes, that's what I thought you meant. But except to say you're getting the job done, and stay with it, right? You have lots of kids, no one else has kids. Eventually, you're going to be more. Eventually, that's going to help you out. In the same way that in real life in America, there's a suspicion. I come from a heavily evangelical county. There's suspicions about the details of Mormon belief about God and such. And there's no way you can argue that out with people who don't want to come here and study for months. I mean, it's a hardly fair thing to expect. So, like the Christians in the early days show that your way of life makes sense, whatever the wholesale beliefs are, that your way of life makes perfectly good sense retail, and it does. Get married young, have lots of kids, take the family seriously, have pretty much an all-volunteer religion. So the pathologies of institutionalized salary religion aren't there, and they generally keep in not being the way you are, but more so. The political thing, as we were talking about at lunch, is pretty much prudential, and as soon as someone talked, I tend to agree with the person who just talked. So I actually thought your objection made a lot of sense in the Belgian context, and maybe even in the California context. Actually, the Mormons get. It becomes a prudential judgment whether the fight over same-sex marriage is lost. If it's lost, there might be a prudential judgment. Well, let's just do what we can do well, and don't irritate people unnecessarily. I for now agree with Ralph. It's not lost, and you should try. But more studies could come at any moment that would push me in the other direction on that. And that's a prudential judgment you have to make for yourself. But in some of your beliefs are very questionable, like this hostility to caffeine. You might want to rethink that one. And then the alcohol thing. That's a little bit. Some studies don't help you. But in general, living in a healthy and sensible way without going into the details. So you really do, and it's integrated. This is the only college in the country where the whole life, including these details of daily life, are integrated into the education. The evangelicals and Catholics don't do that, and they don't have opinions on a lot of these things, for one thing. And secondly, and I say this is the highest praise I can give you, Mormons, in my experience, come closer to practicing what they preach than anyone else in the country. There's still a gap there, you probably have noticed, but the gap is much less, I think. And so continue to preach sensible things and practice them. And then the deep theological issues, I'll discuss these with Ralph, and it always turns out that the double theology, or whatever the word you use, that the Catholics use for theology, you're always strongest when negating the other guy's weaknesses. I mean, so like the Christians have this creation ex nihilo thing, and there are problems with that, even logically. But I'm not going to say anything about what Mormons believe.
You can say it.
No, I'm not going to say it. The future divinity of the human being through a number of lives. This is questionable to me, I have to admit. I may not understand the doctrine exactly. On the other hand, the best empirical, I'm going way too far here. The toughness and cheerfulness of the Mormon, studies really show that the Mormons show at funerals. Maybe some evidence you're onto something there, but for now, it doesn't make that much sense to me. On the other hand, the Christian thing, where it's like they from the point of your philosophy, either the world is created or the world is eternal. Neither is possible, but it's got to be one or the other. We can find insuperable objections to both of them at the level of logic. I think I'll let you much more equipped to answer his question about what we should do.
Peter, could I explain a little item that you were referring to? The church wanted to make a stand, I believe, on same-sex marriage in Europe, but the stake presidents had to explain to the brethren who asked them that the costs were too great in terms of our potential damages to the missionary effort and other aspects, and that they simply couldn't do it. And that the stand wasn't made there. But it was made in California, where we're strong enough to take whatever we get. And in some sense, we have to stand up, even if we lose.
No, I think that's right. But at the end of the day, here's where I agree with you, that you should stand up. It finally is, at the end of the day, credentials. So I think you made the right credential decision in California.
Freely engaged.